Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Invincible Iron Man number 3, cover dated January 1997. So this is Heroes Reborn Iron Man. The creative team here shouted out on the cover: Scott Lobdell, writer, Jim Lee, also co-plotting this. Whilce Portacio pencils, and Scott Williams and John Dickenson on inks. And the cover is by Whilce Portacio and Scott Williams. It's kind of a hard one to read. What's going on here? Doesn't it look like Iron Man's being decapitated? But I think the idea is he's floating in the pool of water beneath Niagara Falls, which is the last time that we saw him, falling into that with an unconscious Hulk at the end of the previous issue's cliffhanger. So you can see here in the top corner box, it's the Fantastic Four's Thing. So we can expect that he's going to be guest starring in this issue. Let's open this one up to the splash page, see what we have. And you can see it's the Thing. It's the image of him from the cover, but it's Whilce Portacio's version of the Thing. And look at that big, long, curving neck of his, kind of like a big bull neck or something. And his anatomy is quite strange. It looks kind of more organic than Rocky, more like he's got some kind of surface skin condition than anything else. And I have mentioned in my videos on the Fantastic Four, whether it's John Byrne's Fantastic Four or Jim Lee's Hero Reborn Fantastic Four, that the Thing is a tricky character to draw. Kirby created the model for the Thing after he developed a particular version of him that was locked in around issue 50 for sure, the Galactus storyline. And certain artists excel at it, like John Byrne, like Walter Simonson, like Jim Lee, but I have to say that Whilce Portacio's version is not one of my favorites. Anyway, the Thing here on the splash page, he has to deliver one of his catchphrases: "What a revolt and development." And what's he doing with this debris from Stark International? Well, let's turn the page. We got a double page spread here, and we've got the rest of the Fantastic Four, as well as the Thing's leg here in the foreground. And again, you can see the degree to which Portacio is kind of indicating normal human anatomy and just this kind of rocky orange skin condition that the Thing is suffering from his transformation. Here we've got Reed Richards, of course, and he's picking up some of the debris as well. He's got those massively pumped thigh muscles, a bit different from Jim Lee's version of Reed over on Fantastic Four. The Human Torch looks good, and Sue Storm looks pretty good there as well. So in Reed's dialogue, he's just basically running through the events of the previous couple of issues, most particularly the former one. The Fantastic Four have arrived to investigate what happened at the Stark International Buffalo facility, where in the previous issue Tony Stark in the Iron Man armor battled the Hulk. So let's continue with this. And this is an interestingly designed page. I've been pointing out how Whilce Portacio is someone who's not afraid to use negative space as part of the design of his page layouts. So you can see it going on here. We have Jasper Sitwell, who is an employee of Tony Stark's, but there have been clues that he maybe has his own agenda. And here he is asking the Fantastic Four what has happened to Tony Stark. And he says, "I only allowed you on the secured site as a courtesy to Colonel Nick Fury. Apparently he felt you owed something." So that's he owed you something. That's at the end of Fantastic Four number 3. And Sitwell continues, "Truthfully, Dr. Richards, I find your sudden interest in the personal affairs of your former college roommate to be a bit suspect," which is rich coming from this guy, "especially in light of the fact that you were noticeably absent during his recent trial. So that gets the Thing's goat there. You might want to consider smiling when you say that, Sitwell. Look at the white of his eyes there. Now the Thing should have baby blue eyes, and that's been dropped out. Is it for aesthetic effect, or is it an error? We'll see him with the baby blues later in the issue. And then that's an interesting shot of Reed there. Different kind of physiognomy from the version that Jim Lee draws, and a very thick neck as well. What does Reed say in reply to Sitwell? Tony and I have since drifted apart since college. Jasper, that's true. He's been through a lot in the past few years. He needs his friends around him at a time like this. Now, if you're done, we have a job to do. So off they go. And Sue with her force field bubble there as well. Yeah, so interesting. We get to see the Fantastic Four's teeny tiny figures there. And here again, over here at Sitwell, we've got this upshot in his face. Interesting lighting, spotting of blacks beneath his cheekbones. This drawing of Jasper Sitwell reminds me of the comic actor and stand-up comedian who features Richard Lewis, who features and plays himself, Richard Lewis, in Larry David's Curb Your Enthusiasm. Just looks very much like him in that particular drawing of Portacio's. Do you agree? Let me know what you think about that. So, continuing with the story, the scene shifts to 39 Bellevue Avenue, Eastchester, New York, home of Pepper Potts. So in issue number 1, Pepper Potts was fired by Tony Stark, and here she is using her free time to dye her hair blonde. That's a nice shot of her looking in the mirror there, and she's thinking about what she's going to do with all her free time when there's a noise down in the basement of her house. So she thinks to herself as she goes down with a flashlight, classic horror movie trope here, I should call the police, but they have their hands full after the blackout caused by Mr. Stark and that Hulk. So that's at the end of the previous issue. Listen to me, she continues thinking to herself, I'm talking like I know for sure that he was Iron Man. That was her guess in the previous issue. But then she thinks to herself, who else could it have been? To the best of my knowledge, besides Mr. Stark, I'm the only other living person who's ever seen that prototype of the Prometheum armor. So it's a prototype that was made after the death of Rebel O'Reilly, which seemed to have seriously affected Tony Stark and basically turned him into an emotional Scrooge type, which it seems he has worked his way through in the previous issue. And she continues here, which I guess would make me the perfect person to kill off if someone wanted to keep that secret. Maybe I should have called the police. Would have been better if this was on a page turn, another full page image of Tony Stark in the Iron Man armor tumbling in through the door of her basement saying, Pepper, need your help please. So then the title of the story is Misperceptions. The creative team, Scott Lobdell and Jim Lee on story. So they're co-plotting this, and Scott Lobdell obviously is providing the script. Whilce Portacio on pencil, Scott Williams and JD, that is John Dickenson, on inks, but assisted by Tom McWeeny and Trevor Scott. Joe Chiodo and Martin Jimenez on colours, Wildstorm FX on the computer colours. Richard Starkings, Comicraft, Dave Landfair, and I'm not sure who AD is, on the digital lettering, and that rounds out the creative team. So Pepper's dropped her torch there in shock, but she calls out Mr. Stark. Now remember, the Iron Man armor disguises his voice, but it doesn't seem to be working here. He seems to be speaking in his normal voice. Armor prototype, only thing keeping me alive, he explains. Heart nearly shredded, energy depleted. Please help, as he tumbles onto the ground. So she's there, she's thinking what to do. She picks the jumper cables off the wall of her basement and attaches them to Stark's armor. And he says, if I don't get to say later, thanks for everything. She tells him to shut up, but sir, and attaches it to the chest piece of his armor and lets rip with the electrics. So that gets him back on his feet. Cardiopulmonary online, respiratory up and running. So, and then he's back, his voice is back, even as he's sweating onto the ground off his nose. I can feel my heart pounding in my ears, but at least it's pounding. You do good work. So she says, thanks. So, Mr. Stark, you want to tell me what this was all about? Boss. So she's kind of angling there to get her old job back. Let's continue with this. Well, there's a scene shift to Madame Hydra. She's at some Hydra facility, and she's got her foot soldiers there. She's asking about word from their intended guest. No word at all. She's annoyed that this guest is late. When and if he does arrive, she says, kill him. And then, of course, she declares, Hail Hydra, which they respond to. But then there's a wind. Do you hear that? She says, feel that. He's here, as her earrings move in the wind. So whoosh, sound effect. Who is this making the entrance? It's Whirlwind. So it's an old Avengers villain from the 60s. And we've got a redesign now of his armor here by presumably Whilce Portacio, but it could be Jim Lee doing the redesign, or maybe the pair of them collaborating on that. Looks very much like a Jim Lee Whilce Portacio design either way. And the guy says, "You don't sound much happy to see me," and she responds with her big elongated Whilce Portacio neck there. "You're late. The only thing I like less than working with freelance assassins is working with unprofessional freelance assassins who can't tell the time." So we've got a little funny bit of dialogue here from Scott Lobdell. He's bringing the value in the scripting. "Late," says Whirlwind. "I'm early. It's only 8:15. And she replies, "I was expecting you at 8 o'clock. Really?" he says. "I wrote down 8:30 in my book." So that's fairly funny. So where's that going to go to? Anyway, the scene switches to Westchester County. Pepper Potts has driven her and Tony Stark to the Stark International Facility, Technical Resources Division there in her banger. And that's kind of interesting because it reveals that even though she was Tony Stark's personal assistant, he wasn't paying her very much, if that's basically the kind of car that she was able to afford. Or maybe it was just her choice. She liked it. That's a possibility too. So she's having an argument here with the security guard about clearance, and he says, "You're not on the list of official visitors to her." So she responds craftily, "Nobody knows that more than I do, Sid. I make up that list, remember?" So he says he's well aware of that, but he can't let her in. And she says, "You caught me, pardon." He says, "Sid, look, Sid, it's like this. Remember those twins Stark was linked with in the tabloids, those Yugoslavian supermodel sisters? That's a sign of the times as well. There's no such thing as Yugoslavia anymore. And I don't think there was in 1996, if I'm not mistaken. In any case," he says, "Yeah, well, I'm here to pick up some lab results for Mr. Stark for obvious reasons. He'd like to keep it all hush-hush. That's why I'm not on the official list." So Sid gives in, and she's there charming him, saying, "Right now I have to get in and out real quick, and I'd hate to have to write on my report to Mr. Stark that I couldn't get in because of you, Sid. You know how he is when he gets angry." So off she goes in the car. He lets her go. And we know that Tony Stark is there under a blanket in the back seat. "So how do I get when I get angry?" he says. "You don't remember?" she asks him. "Honestly, there was a time I don't remember ever getting angry," he replies. "But that was before, you know." So that's his friend Rebel O'Reilly getting blown up in the original prototype of the Prometheum armor. So she says she knows, and she says, "For the record, I figure we've about 6 minutes before we're busted. I give Sid 4 minutes to get his nerve back, and another 2 minutes before he calls and discovers I'm Tony Stark's former executive assistant." So she's harping on that one, and he kind of replies as if he doesn't know what happened. "How did that happen?" "You fired me, sir." "Well, that was stupid." "Yes, sir, it was." I like that. That's good banter between them. So Lobdell really kind of nailing the chemistry between these two. And also like that shot of the empty staff parking lot outside the facility as well. Something as simple as that really kind of adds to the creating the environment, establishing the location. And then the scene shifts to upstate New York. And who's this woman sitting out on her front porch? "Arthur, please," she says. "What happened was bad, horrible, but it's over. We had our date in court and we lost. You can't let it keep gnawing away at you, eating you up inside. Nothing you can do to Stark is going to change what happened to this town and the people that lived and worked here." And he replies, "Look at that big bull neck as well. The eyes there, kind of like very far apart on his face. An interesting physiognomy for sure. I'm only doing what's right, Amy," he says. "I'm doing what I have to hold Stark accountable for what he did to my town, to my company." So this is someone that the old Tony Stark rode roughshod over, and he's out for vengeance. "You're my wife," he says. "I was hoping you'd stand by me. Even if I have to do it with my own two hands, Tony Stark is going to pay for what he's done." as he walks off into the night. So we're going to see how that develops, and we're going to learn Arthur's surname as well in the course of the remainder of the issue. So 1 mile above the Westchester plant, we've got Human Torch. He's checking some computer systems there, and below we see what the Human Torch has seen on the screen. According to the diagnostic scans, says Stark, the armor self-repair program is complete. If you don't count the fact my heart is dependent on the Prometheum armor for total life support, I'd say it was in perfect health for a dead man. So he's got a sense of humor about things. She says to him, you almost sound happy about it. He replies, I almost am. Tonight when I was mixing it up with the Hulk, even before that, when I left the party to investigate the break-in, he says, for the first time in years, I felt that old excitement again. I felt like I was doing something with my life, something other than buying and selling companies and counting the money. Does that make any sense? But this part here, buying and selling companies and counting the money, is going to come back and bite him on his armoured rear end, we can infer. So Pepper says, welcome back, Mr. Stark. There were those of us who missed you lots. But I do have to point out that your troubles aren't over. Like you heard on the radio, you're among the missing. And unless you want everyone to know you're trapped in this armour, that you and Iron Man are one and the same, you'll need to explain how. And then they're interrupted. This would have been better on a page turn, but it's the Thing. And again, you can see that kind of strange way that Whilce Portacio is rendering the Thing's rocky orange skin. So the Thing says, hey lady, I'm looking for a guy in a big shiny tin cup. Turns out he was the last person that saw a friend of mine alive. Way I hear it, this Iron Man is here. So she turns around and says, you're the Thing they call the Earth Thing. That's a nice close-up on the Thing's face. I like this. This works. And there's his baby blues. It's actually the ever-loving blue-eyed Thing, he says. But yeah, I'm him. Now you might want a vamoose, lady. It could get pretty ugly around here. Let's turn the page. Nice double-page spread here of Iron Man attacking the Thing, hitting him straight in the stomach, knocking him back, pushing him back, and saying to the Thing's question, or sorry, rather Iron Man saying, I don't know who you are or what your interest is in Tony Stark, but, and the Thing responds, who am I? I'm practically the leader of the Fantastic Four. That's hilarious. That's good stuff from Scott Lobdell. Don't you read the newspapers or nothing? Sheesh, it ain't like a person's gonna confuse me with some other orange brick skinned monster. So this is an interesting panel here. Side profile of Iron Man and a tight side profile of the Thing. These panels look good. And Iron Man says, the truth of the matter is, I've had a lot on my mind the past few months. I've been a bit self-absorbed of late. So of course, reference to Tony Stark. And the Thing says, yeah, I seen what you and your sparring partner did to Niagara Falls. So until you tell me what you done with Stark, consider this another catchphrase, clobbering time. So he hits him there, but I don't know if this is the most dynamic punch that Whilce Portacio has ever drawn. It looks kind of static to me. In any case, Iron Man is caught here by the elastic body of Mr. Fantastic, and he starts dialoguing with Iron Man. Excuse my colleague, he says. Iron Man. Ben tends to get a bit enthusiastic. It's why we love him, says Sue. And Iron Man replies, I don't find it nearly as endearing, but then I'm not without my own faults. I'm not real big on patience. So he electrifies the armor and shocks Reed there. But Reed's okay. It was a low-grade electromagnetic pulse. And now Stark recognizes Reed, because of course he would never have seen him in a costume like that or exercising this kind of stretching power. So he recognizes him. Reed Richards, do I know you? Asks Reed. So this is a moment that Tony could have confided in his old friend, one of the Knights of the Atomic Table. Atomic Knights of the Round Table. Do you, he asks, do I tell him the truth, he thinks to himself, that I'm one of his best friends from college when the world was a brighter place and I was a better person? So will he make that decision? Well, Pepper intrudes and she makes the decision for him. getting between them, and she covers for him. I'd like to introduce you to Iron Man, she says. As you can see by these papers, he's Mr. Stark's private bodyguard. He is? Asks Reed. He is, she says. And Tony says, I am. You are. I am. His bodyguard, I am. That's pretty funny stuff. That's well done by Scott Lobdell. So Pepper continues, in fact, Iron Man, why don't you go into the other room and tell Mr. Stark that he has visitors? So off he goes. Pepper stalls the Fantastic Four, kind of gets something to drink, and then Tony arrives with a big bathrobe covering the armor. It's kind of hilarious looking. And he greets Reed and Ben because he knows them from college. And there's a reconciliation here between these former friends. Reed says to him, smiling, sounds like you've everything under control, Tony. And Tony responds, in a way, for the first time in a long time, I feel like I do, Reed. If that's true, old friend, says Reed, then I'm happy for you. So that's good. Good stuff. Back to upstate New York again. Arthur, remember him? He's in an all but abandoned complex, which once belonged to Parks Fiber Optics before the company was bought and sold by Stark International. So that was Tony in his heartless buying out and selling, dismantling and selling off companies phase like Gordon Gekko. But who is Arthur? He's Arthur Parks, CEO, former founder and CEO, conducting a final experiment on himself. I'm coming for you, Anthony Stark, he says. With those words, a final switch is thrown, and the final thought that explodes white hot into Arthur Park's mind is that of retribution. Next issue, Living Laser, that's what he's become. So again, this is the Heroes Reborn origin and redesign of the classic 60s Avengers villain, the Living Laser that we're seeing here. So all the pieces being set up now, Hydra, Whirlwind, Living Laser. Life is going to get very complicated for Iron Man, Tony Stark in upcoming issues. This is a good issue, this one. You know, the action is there, the intrigue is there, good characterization of Tony and Pepper Potts in Scott Lobdell's script, and nice appearance by the Fantastic Four as well. So that is it. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary of Heroes Reborn Iron Man number 3. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comment section. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. It really does help the channel. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.